Good morning and welcome to the February 9th edition of Issues That Matter. And today we have a special show for you, and it's special for a couple of reasons. Number one, and many people don't realize this, but this week is Be Kind to Host Week. And in view of that, and to recognize that, the studio has been kind enough to arrange to have a guest host. And I'm just going to be sitting back here and taking in the information, and there's a lot of good information out there that we're going to be talking about today. But you're not going to be listening to me. You're going to be listening to my guest host, Catherine Wilson. Catherine, welcome back.
Thanks, Scott.
And
I'm happy to be here.
For those regular viewers, Catherine is no stranger. She can be strange, but she's no stranger.
Truth.
But
Truth.
Catherine, again, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you.
Sucker.
And our guest today is Dee Clarke. Now, Dee Clarke is an advocate or a spokesperson to deal with an issue that most people either misunderstand it, don't really know that much about it, and because of those two factors, don't know how to handle it. But Dee's going to be talking to us about it, and we're going to be learning a lot. So buckle up, sit back, relax, and take in the information. And Dee, welcome to Issues That Matter.
I'm glad to be here.
And with that, guess what? I'm going to take a break. So Catherine, take the show.
So he's saying he's not going to talk. Yeah.
We'll
New
see.
Yorker, right? Impossible. So we've been talking for like a half an hour already. And if you're on Facebook Live, you've been privy to that conversation. We have Dee Clarke, and in the world of sex trafficking, she is a superstar. She is the fairy godmother to women who are still being trafficked currently, and the ones that are newly coming out. She helps them through that process. What she does with Survivors Speak, you're going to learn all this straight from her. But what she does with Survivors Speak, what she does in our community is an issue that matters. It's a perfect show for her to be on, because who she is and what she does in our community around this topic is mind-blowing. When we talk about one person matters, when we say one person matters, wait till you hear all of the things that Dee has been able to accomplish. One person. Working with the trafficked girls, women, and with changing the policies, is that the right term? The policies is really pertinent. In the world of sex trafficking, child sexual assault prevention, there's all these different spider webs, all these different lanes to this, and the laws that need to change, how we work with law enforcement, how we work with the trafficked girls, what do we do about Johns, how do we stop them from buying. This is a complex issue, and when you have experts that are staying in their lane and knocking it out of the park, man, we need to stop and give them the spotlight, listen and learn. So Dee, thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here.
I know, it's so exciting.
I'm excited, and if I can just say something really quick.
Sure.
It is important to understand sex trafficking, and it's really important to catch those perpetrators that are trafficking young girls and women. But in Survivors Speak, we use a different terminology, because sex trafficking came up with a language for the penal code for law enforcement and prosecutors to be able to charge a person that's hurting someone by forcing them to have sex in exchange for money to pay that perpetrator. That's why it's there. But
that's why we have the term sex trafficking.
Right.
And you're saying we need to change that language.
Absolutely. So what Survivors Speak uses is sexploitation.
Sexploitation.
Yes. So sexploitation and sex trafficking, in the end, it is all about prostitution, exchanging sex for money or goods. And when somebody has been deemed trafficked and there's proof and evidence and they can help that person is identifying their trafficker. If you look at her story and her history, and then someone who is not deemed trafficked but maybe just prostitution by choice, which is really difficult. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you look at both those women's story and their history, and they're exactly alike. So we're saying get rid of the word trafficking and see that person as being sexploited, which means she's being victimized and exploited, because sexploitation is done through victimization and exploitation.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So it's important to still be able to find and prosecute perpetrators, sex traffickers, and have that terminology in that law. But it doesn't work when law enforcement are forced to do their work, and I'm empathetic to this. And rather it's a sting or however they end up discovering this woman, in a short time they have to decide, is this person trafficked or is she a criminal? And we're saying either way, that person's sexploited. And women don't usually disclose. Women don't usually right away say they're a victim. Some women don't understand that they're a victim, but they really won't easily say, yes, there's someone forcing me to do this. And women who are really, truly oppressed through sexploitation have no language to even talk about what's happening to them. They're stuck. Mm-hmm. So we're saying, call it sexploitation. You know, that person, regardless, is being exploited and victimized and deserves some way, some path to come out of that. And the Department of Justice all over the United States has granted different states and providers grants to help that person come out of that life via giving them services and a path out, but not for the...
If they're considered sex trafficked,
right,
not normal prostitution, what
right,
one would call prostitution.
Right.
So
it's all prostitution.
It's all, so we agree with that. It's all, but you're saying in the eyes of the local law enforcement, not federal,
yeah,
as you were saying.
Right.
But in our local law, it's sex trafficking and prostitution.
Right.
And if they're deemed, and the cop has to figure this out
right,
momentarily, and maybe the woman, she hasn't figured it out for herself. Never mind this police officer trying to in a short amount of time. So if she's deemed sex trafficked, then she has the opportunity for some services. If she's deemed prostitute, she's not. And you're saying that the sexploitation should cover both, right, so that services are available.
Right. And about the federal thing, I wasn't talking about federal state law, but earlier we were talking, and sometimes FBI and Homeland Security have, I don't know how they do it, but they have intel and they've been watching something, and they know when they go do this sting that the woman or girl that they're going to encounter is being pimped, trafficked, whatever you want to call it. And they have all kinds of intel that tells them that. And that victim may or may not disclose. Let's say she doesn't. They still know because they have all that information. So they see her as a victim, and they'll take the time to try to help her and show her that they can help her, compared to not having any of that intel and going on naked eyes of, we saw a post or we saw you on the corner, and them trying to determine it.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit.
You got red on, go for it.
I'm going for love. It's that one's pink,
that's
so I'm
better.
going for February love. I've got dog marks, dog slime, so puppy love. So I can hear people saying, are there really prostitutes, we're just calling that, in the state of Maine? Is prostitution really a thing in Maine?
Absolutely. Sex trafficking is prostitution. Sexploitation is prostitution. Because no matter what, in the end, it comes down to exchanging sex for money or goods. That's what prostitution is. Okay, so I was prostituted. So I used the word prostituted women. And now we use the word sexploited women.
Which is an indication that you were being used as a prostitute, but you were not really a willing prostitute.
Absolutely.
You were being forced to do it.
But there are those, we'll take a minute and talk about sex work. It's insulting for me to hear people use the terminology sex work, especially when organizations use it when they're in the same sentence of talking about children, underage people who have been exploited through exchanging sex for money. That is not sex work, nor is it for a 40-year-old or a 30-year-old when it's done through sexploitation, victimization, and exploitation. The sex worker that people seem to think exists, that they do, if that's the word we're going to call them, they have full agency over their body and over their consciousness, is far from the women we're talking about.
Right.
Far, far, far from it.
So it's the opposite of what maybe, again, devil's advocate people are thinking. They're thinking that the sexploitation is this much, you know, a small percentage, and the fully functioning, making a decision, you know, is the majority, when really what we want to say today is it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, and those, so the sexploited women cannot and do not organize. I'm trying to help educate and organize those. And the sex worker, high on the hill, full agency, making the big buck, knows what she's doing, they have all they can. They have loads of ways to organize, and even organize with feminists. So I don't have nothing to say against them.
Right, you're
But-
talking about the mass majority.
Yeah, and that the mass majority who are being exploited, it starts really young. You know, you just don't end up exchanging sex for money out of the blue. It starts very young, and it's usually children who have experienced loads of violence, been exposed to mental illnesses that were untreated, and substance misuse, been neglected, and most definitely have been sexually abused as a child. They don't get to develop a normal childhood personality because they don't reach the normal childhood milestones, if I can finish. Instead, they're victimized so much that what they develop is a victim personality. You know, they don't develop a sense of self, a sense of self-worth. They develop a victim personality. It carries through their adolescence, and they're always easily targeted right through their adolescence, right into their womanhood. And some end up with severely abusive husbands and boyfriends or girlfriends, and some end up being trafficked.
Right.
What might be the younger range of children that might get exploited or
Average
trafficked?
age, 12
Well,
to 14.
I was 12.
Yeah. And that's the average age, 12 to 14.
So, and now they're saying now it's not 12, it's 14, but I was 12. It just so happens I was 12. The first time I was forced to exchange sex for money. And there's women in my group, Survivors Speak SALT group, that were as early as 16. So,
So let's talk about
Mid-teen years.
I'm sorry?
The mid-teen years.
Yeah, and the other
Young.
thing about that age, we don't really fully develop in our brain
Right.
until we're after our 20s. So it makes sense.
without head trauma.
Without trauma, yes. So it makes sense that it's easy to manipulate a kid, but especially if she's had childhood trauma.
Right. So do you want to talk about Survivor Speak, how that got started and what you're doing?
So Survivor Speak is now Survivor Speak USA, and we're national as well as international. But it was started because I was already written into one of those Department of Justice grants to help women that are deemed trafficked. And I did like the work, I liked everything I was doing, except for it was difficult. There were women that couldn't receive help based on what we just talked about.
Right.
They weren't seen as trafficked, and it's usually because they don't disclose and they don't want to be a witness, or sometimes they did not at that time have a trafficker but was still stuck in the residue of it. So I started Survivor Speak, and I have to read my mission, it's terrible.
Yeah, no,
and the mission
please
of
do.
Survivor Speak is to provide education, advocacy, and mentoring to sexploited people and the communities that serve them in order to ensure sustainable positive changes. So I am advocating and mentoring sexploited women. Some have had pimps, some have had not. And how I do that is through SALT, Survivor Advocacy Leadership Training. And
Survivor Advocacy Leadership Training.
yes, so they come to workshops twice a month. I've raised money from public speaking and pay a stipend to them. We've just recently received our first grant. They've been coming to this for over a year. They're ready to graduate. Now they're starting the next SALT. They're training the next group. And the way I do that, also I say, Survivor Speak is to provide education, advocacy, and mentoring also to the communities that serve them. So we're at tables that make these decisions, especially public policy as well as private policy. We're at the State House. We're working with other groups of people who do lobbying to make sure we find ways to either amend laws, change laws, or create laws that are really truly going to assist and help the women and children that are being affected by those laws. Right now, the laws that are in place and laws that are coming down the pike the lawmakers aren't really that informed if they're not hearing from us. So there's two parts. How can they hear from us unless we can organize? And it's a very difficult thing from going from recovery to leadership, because recovery can take years.
Don't I know?
And organizing and educating oneself. So Survivor Speak tries to do that. The other side of that is legislators aren't hearing from us to be informed because it's kind of like a monopoly up there. There's already people doing that work. Most of the time they're doing what needs to be done, and sometimes they're in the way. So the lawmakers...
Sometimes they're doing what needs to be done, and sometimes they're in the way.
And so they, the best thing they can do is move out of the way and tell the lawmakers, you need to hear from survivors.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to go find the survivors because Survivor Speak is here. And we are 8 deep of women have recovered or in a recovery process. And then there's the other group, SAC, Survivor Advisory Council. Those are women who still somehow are engaged in this.
Engage in this how?
Actually, only 2 actually have a pimp, a boyfriend, and the others are still exchanging sex for money because of severe oppression, mental illnesses, substance misuse.
But you don't turn them away.
No.
I love that. So even if they're still participating in that lifestyle, they still have a safe place to go and talk and be and learn.
Well,
and
I have to say 2 things about that. They could not be in SALT, because SALT, you have to have some recovery and stability.
yeah.
They can be in Survivor Advisory Council, and I meet them where they're at, wherever they want to meet. However, that same group can go to the Well, and the Well is not my group, but I'm excited and part of that, and that's the Salvation Army. They
Yeah,
offer a once a
love
week
that.
drop-in. So anybody from Survivor Advisory Council could go there and hang out, and there's no, you show up as you are, and people are
So
there.
if there are any women who are listening who aren't ready to stop, but they would like to know more, then what would you advise them?
Well, hopefully you're going to show my phone number and my email address.
Yes,
right?
Steve's going to do that.
And people can call me at any hour. We were just talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't sleep. It doesn't matter what time it is. But I usually go to bed around 1, and I got my feet on the ground by 5:15. I'll meet with people. I'll talk to people, whatever it is that's helpful. And my thoughts and ideas of how to do this is an accumulation of me looking back and saying, what helped me? What changed my way of being? What gave me the confidence to see myself better than what I was told I was? And that's what I'm trying to offer. And now we have women that are graduating that can go mentor more women and do the same thing.
Love that. 8 deep. That's huge.
Yeah.
It sounds
pretty
like and you might say it has this will have a religious flair to it. It sounds like a recovery ministry.
It's not a ministry.
I realize
but I need to say
I
that
realize that
publicly.
it's not affiliated or associated with any type of religion. I understand that, but it functions in
calling.
much the
A
same way.
calling, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Misunderstood.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
it
a
is a
calling.
calling. And I'm not religious in this. I don't want it to be a religious thing. I have a lot of community partners that are, on that side, it's called faith-based groups. Salvation Army has supported Survivor Speak in a lot of ways, and all these other faith-based groups, and I think it's marvelous. But I choose to, based on a history of knowledge from advocating around poverty and homelessness in like 20 years, that the more open I am to people, the more people have access to me. If I put parameters around who I am, less people will access me. Not that I'm great, but I can at least start a path for someone somewhere. And
Right. I love that.
so, yeah.
So how can people support you and what you're doing? Well, so I'm thinking about the work that you do with the women. It doesn't cost the women anything to participate. So any resources, food.
Actually, you know what? And I've asked, so it hasn't happened. So we meet twice a month specifically for workshops. And in those workshops, recovery happens. Even though there's sections that are around recovery, recovery just happens through the whole year. And we supply food. So if someone wants to donate 2 fairly good meals a month, that would be awesome. Otherwise, it comes out of our budget.
I love, and this is in Portland, right?
We just
where
got
you
our own
meet?
space.
So are you allowed to say your space? where
I
your
can't
space
wait to
is?
tell you.
Tell me.
So we now have a space at Armistead, which is at the corner of Spring in Danforth. It's in the Catholic Charities building, and it's downstairs, and we have a large, lovely space that's ours, and I can have office hours there, as well as childcare. So yeah, we meet twice a month for
What
that.
time?
That one's from 5:30 to 7:30, and we break at 6:30 to eat. And so it's either I cooked, I bought food, or brought food to prepare.
So the restaurateurs in Portland who are listening, if they would like to organize
Yeah.
and donate 2 meals a month,
yeah,
right? 2 meals a
excellent.
month for about
Wow.
12 people.
Nope, this one is 6 to 7.
6
and the
to
new
7
group
people.
starts in March, and so it will be 6.
Okay, so 2 meals a month, 6 to 7 people, call it 7, little take home.
Oh yeah, I mean, we also feed the person providing childcare.
Right.
And my assistant, Jenny.
Yep.
So we'll say
So
8.
there you go, there
Yeah.
you go. And when you provide that, tell them that you saw it on Issues That Matter. Plug, plug.
And it's a tax deductible
And it's
because
a
we're
tax
nonprofit.
deduction, yeah.
Good check mark for you.
Yeah.
Got that plug in there.
Right.
Way to go.
Another group of people have organized in a way that, so some of the women that are stable and coming through SALT, or I'm mentoring them and they're not, have very little money. So people, I've asked to donate laundry detergent, that's always a big one, diapers, baby wipes. People are donating lots of personal care, shampoo and body wash. And if we ever have an abundance, I always pass it on to either the sober house that just opened up, that's all for women that have been sex-exploited, or Hope Rising.
Love that. So personal items, laundry soap, shampoo, soap, razors, toothbrush, toothpaste,
But especially diapers, baby wipes, and laundry.
diapers, baby
Yeah.
wipe, and laundry. Yeah.
And through my public speaking or holding educational forums, I've raised money to be able to give women a stipend to come and to not have to worry about transportation and to have a few dollars in their pocket.
Yeah.
The new recovery program we're getting ready to do, we've met once, is Women in Recovery in a safe house, and we'll be giving them a stipend, but their stipend is in a gift card. Of
So
like,
how much money, so a woman would come to participate in the program?
so they receive $50 in a Visa card, and the other group receives a $10 Hannaford cards, and they're really just have no means of anything. They're in a safe house,
Yeah.
and at least buy cigarettes so they can go down the street and get coffee. But this year we received a grant from Maine Initiative, so I'm really grateful for that. And so for 2018, $10,000, for 2019,
Yay.
$10,000, and 2020, $5,000. And it cost, now that we've looked at our budget, it cost a little over $8,000 to run Survivor Speak SALT last year. It was probably more than that because I didn't keep track of,
Yeah.
I did keep track, but I didn't put in the budget for paying for childcare. And we pay for childcare. We have someone that comes and takes care of children. That's
So if someone wanted to donate $10,000, that would cover Survivor Speak, the work that you do with SALT for a year.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Hey,
You never know.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's wonderful.
And the fact that Survivor Speak had this concept of SALT, you know, training and mentoring and educating women on the systems and educating women on victimhood development versus childhood development, which we call pathways into sexploitation, worked. Because now some women are going to graduate from that, and now they're going to actually facilitate the next group. And I'll be in the background being the
Love
gopher or the cheerleader.
So the women are learning, they might still be in and out.
Not in SALT.
Not in SALT, but I mean in the, what's
SAC,
the, in
Survivor
SAC.
Advisory
Yep,
Council.
so they might start off there, and then they come in, they've stopped doing that, now they're in SALT, and they have a sisterhood.
Well, that would be great. They do have a sisterhood. No one from SAC has become SALT yet. People in SALT, they already had a good amount of recovery mentally,
Okay.
emotionally, and if they had substances. Not everybody that comes in has substance problem, but everybody that comes in has emotional and mental health
Right.
issues.
So what they're learning from you, at whatever level that they're at, is they're learning they have a sisterhood, they're getting an education on maybe the missing pieces that they didn't get, some opportunities to heal those pieces.
Right, exactly
also
that.
to learn how to use Maine's resources, because you're just sort of, you know, I remember when my mom had cancer, I can't imagine her trying to figure out
Right.
what was available while she was in trauma of finding out she had cancer.
Right.
You know,
Well, like that for an example, just that for an example. Women who are considered trafficked, even if they turn it down, they have a chunk of resources through case management that will connect them to things, right?
they don't even know.
Right, but if they are deemed trafficked and they get to meet the coordinator, that person can help them a long way
Right.
to really get stable. Let me just say, most of the women who are graduating from SALT definitely had that assistance. Not all of them, but most of them did.
Nice.
So it just shows what a difference it made in them becoming stable sooner than not having that.
So you're saying that because of the sexploitation and not prostitution, right?
Sexploitation, the only two words to really compare in the state right now, what's happening is sexploitation and traffic. The women in SALT that were considered trafficked, that could access that grant money, and the coordinator of it fared way better.
Right.
And consider, you know, they're stable sooner.
Then the person who were just deemed hooker, and then it goes on their record.
Yes,
Then they try to
yes.
then they try to get a job.
And they get a fine, and they got to
it-
pay the fine, or they end
right.
up going to jail, and
Because
it
they
stays
can't
on
afford,
their record.
and it stays on their record. And I don't know if the population understands that when if a John and a woman get arrested, right? They get caught, whatever, and they're arrested. It's not on his record, it's on hers. He can go back to work
Right.
on Monday, and she's
Yeah.
got to try to figure out how to, number one, not get beaten up by her pimp because she just lost a night's work.
All kinds of
right?
stuff. It's
All
just so
kinds of-
unfair.
it really is a domino effect.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because Johns do get away with it. And all of my history was from age 12 to 20-ish. I accidentally turned a trick at 21. And I'm not afraid to share it. I don't want to lose the time. And then the women that are in my life that have had John's tricks, dates, whatever we're going to call them, the majority of them seem like average guys that just want a means to an end, exchange sex for money or goods. But there's many of them that are in it for power, for control. I bought you, and now you're going to do what I said. Many want to play out weird fantasies from pornography, and some think they're the good guy, because they're not hurting her. They're just giving her money for what they want. But either way, they do get away with it, and they shouldn't. They should not get away with it. Women get arrested way more than men get arrested. That just says,
Right.
it says a lot about our society. It's
does.
horrible.
It does.
Yeah.
So,
And I've known women, even in my own experience, but mine is so old, presently today, that tricks, Johns, whatever, have done horrendously horrible things to them. And sometimes they get caught and prosecuted, which is great. But also that mentality and that oppression of, I can't even call a police officer. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go cry to my friends, and that's it. They get away with it that way also. And part of it is because then I have to admit, because the world says, if I'm exchanging sex for money, regardless of what's putting me there, then I'm a dirty, bad girl.
Right.
And I don't want to have to go confront that.
right. Who wants to say, hi, my name is Catherine, I'm an ex-prostitute? Yeah.
Well, I will. Hi, my name is Dee Clarke, and I'm an ex-prostitute.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I'm an ex-prostitute.
You know,
There we go.
there goes this for my girls, my
Yeah,
friends.
right?
But yeah, John's, and there's a lot of things that are corrupt and wrong.
Yeah.
It's still a man's world.
So with Survivor Speak, and now you're going to have these girls who are graduating and passing it on. What are your goals for 2018?
Well, we started our campaign for Vacature 2019, and we want to organize the best we can with the right people to come to a table with us to educate ourselves on what is in the way here in the state of Maine, because Maine has odd rules, that's preventing us from having vacature. And vacature, or vacating, means to remove the crime, to make it null. And we want that for women that have been sexploited. We want all the charges removed. It's not a good idea for pardoning, because pardoning still a criminal and you did something bad, but we're going to forgive you. I don't need to be forgiven. Things were done to me. Crimes were committed against me. Crimes were committed against my friends. They need those crimes removed. So our 2018 campaign is to do all we can to get the right people in place to discuss all the barriers in Maine laws for having vacatur, and then discuss and organize how do we change that and what do we have to do so that women can have their charges
So
vacated.
if that is taken off of their record, then they can go for job. They can go for employment. They don't have to put the shame of putting
the
stuff.
shame,
the
absolutely,
shame.
especially that. So I've been with women who have made out housing applications and were denied because they had a police record, and gone and sat with somebody because she was encouraged to appeal it, because it says on the application you can appeal if you're denied, to talk about, you know, how well she is and how full her life is and how great things are. And the whole time, the person sitting across the desk listening to her really wasn't interested. They just wanted to know what the charge was, period.
Yeah.
And for her to have to say, I was arrested a couple of times for prostitution, and to have that person across from her decide, nope.
To judge her.
Yeah, it's not based on some educating of that person of, is this a violent, whatever. She just said no. And the shame of that person having, you know, spent time to say how well she's doing, but as long as she has that brand, prostitute, she can't move on. So one, we can't move on from our own heads, you know.
Right. So how can our viewers help? Who do we need to write a letter to?
Absolutely. One, if you're very interested,
And we know you are.
yes. First off, because we have a law in place, pardoning, some people believe we can't change it. There is no laws on the book for vacating. And pardoning doesn't work because, again, I'm saying you're forgiving someone for something they did. There are experts here in Maine that we get to talk to that understand the law and what's in the way. And then there's experts elsewhere also who understand the law and what's in the way. We're organizing with them. What you all can do is eventually it's going to be more public, and you'll be able to call legislators. You'll be able to say, we want women's charges vacated, period. Not pardoned, not sealed, because it doesn't change the outcome for that woman. And the biggest thing we're going to get to do with that is erase the stigma in our own heads and be able to move forward. So you can get some jobs, but you'll never be able to get a job that is for that you have to be licensed, including CNA, because you have this criminal record. The part of lifting it from a woman's mentality, I mean, I knew that and other people know that, but I was in a training once in Rhode Island, and the woman that was the lawyer that helped people have their charges vacated talked about how women's just outlook on themselves changed dramatically, and how they moved forward in lots of ways. It just changed them. That, you know, I'm not what people say I am. Yeah.
I saw a Facebook thing yesterday where this high-class beauty salon, very famous beautician guy, went out on the street and gave homeless people a really good haircut,
Yeah.
like a really good haircut. And you could see, that's just a stupid
Yeah,
haircut.
right.
That's just a stupid haircut.
But
I can imagine
good point.
what taking
Yeah.
that shameful A off of their record, you know, that you know, Scarlet A off of their record, where they get to like live
It's very lifting.
and have the life that they are destined to have.
right.
That their past doesn't have to be their future, and it's hard to create a new future when your past is constantly
Right.
being an obstacle
Yeah.
to the most basic things like housing, like getting a job. It's preventing them from moving
Yeah.
forward. It's a ball and
huge-
chain.
Yes,
Yeah.
ball and chain.
Yeah.
It's excellent. Like there's very stable women that are graduating from SALT, and they have records. So they can only go so far. It's great to get educations and degrees, but they can only go so far.
How is the housing for the women? Are there, you know, I've wondered about people, our citizens here in Maine who have an extra bedroom. Their kids have grown and gone. They're not ready to give up the house yet, you know, and maybe you know, being able to offer.
Yeah.
Is that a
I
possibility?
think that's a great idea. I think if somebody well, first of all, no one has any money, but let's just use that scenario for a moment. And it's something that's easy accessible because not everybody has cars. I think it's an excellent idea for that recovered survivor that would just be
So like assault.
Yeah.
So somebody who is entrenched in your program, they've done their, you know, they're not actively going through detox or something. They're really,
No, they've had long
They've had
stability.
long stability and they just need a little help. You know, and that's what families do, right?
Right.
You sort of lift each other up. How many parents do we know that paid for VOTEC school
Yeah.
or helped a friend
Right,
get
so
a loan?
that's a good idea. But the thing that will be missing is what's her transition into her own apartment.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you the barriers to that. Rather, the person is going from a safe house, from a long-term place of recovery, sober houses where you can stay for years,
Yeah.
to access your own apartment, you better have a damn good job with a high-paying amount of money to be able to pay your rent,
Yeah.
to be able to pay, you know, all the things that you have to do to survive. And so I personally would like to see Survivors Speak. For several years, we thought this is the package that women need to come out of the life and be able to stay out of the life. Is number one, they need health insurance. Some women have untreated mental illnesses that call for a psychiatrist for psych meds. And some need trauma therapy. And some need just dang gone good physical health care. So women need main care, period. They need some kind of housing voucher or assistance. And definitely voc rehab, like long-term voc rehab to really try on some new jackets, try on new ways of being, try to find out what kind of skills they have. Even if they have to do a time limit for it. But that alone is a good, like, footing.
So what about my
So
psychiatrist
I'm going to say
friends
this one
out
more
there?
time.
Yeah.
Most of the women, but not all, that have come to SALT access that grant, accessed housing, some accessed main care, some didn't, but they had that grant to help them access therapists and psychiatrists and meds. They had that footing,
Okay.
but it's a small percent.
So the other percent,
psychiatry,
can
yes.
some of my psychiatrist friends out there who are watching,
Yes.
could they
Pro
like
bono or something?
once a month pro bono
Yeah.
come to one of the meetings and stay
Oh.
after or before
Yeah.
and do something like that?
Yeah,
Is that
I don't know what your ethics and boundaries for a psychiatrist are, but I remember a federal prosecutor saying to me, "Gosh, if we could just get some psychiatrists to help us," because she was seeing how severely ill some people were.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be awesome
Yeah.
if it's called pro bono, whatever.
So
that would
I
take
love-
on X amount of people.
I
and
love the Maine community, and
Yeah.
I believe if they understand what's going on and what the needs are, they will rise. I just believe that. And if Survivor Speak needs $10,000 a year, I mean, most people blow that, right? And so we've got such terrific
less than a year.
resources here, right? So $10,000. And if they need food, our restaurateurs, 2 meals a month, you said,
yeah.
right here in Portland, they can do that. If we need psychiatry, again, I don't know, like
Yeah.
you with the boundaries, but
But
that
they
is a-
know. The
but they know.
psychiatrists
They
know.
know.
They know how to make it work.
And they can step up to the plate and offer that too. This is where the community comes together to meet the needs that we have so these women can return to their humanity. Or not even return to their humanity. Some of them have just been brutalized all these years, can enter into humanity.
Find their dignity
find their
and hold their head
dignity,
up.
hold their head up and be productive parts of our community, who, by the way, your women are a great example of this, are giving back.
Yeah.
Here they are, have gone through, they could walk away and say, I owe no one nothing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
See ya.
I'm really
right?
impressed and surprised
Right?
how many just want to stay and do the next
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
A feeling of giving back. The other thing is, I do believe that as community, we all come together and help and do what we can for each other. It's important, and I don't want to see that go away, but there has to be systemic change. I have seen just myself alone go for bat and advocate on behalf of whatever for a survivor. And were able to help her access the things she needed. However, the next survivor might not have that advocate to go and just pound and pound and pound and try to advocate on behalf of whatever it is. So if there's systemic changes across the board, what's good for this one survivor is good for this survivor over here too, and the next one, the next one. And that's Survivors Speak USA. We want to see systemic change. We want to see positive changes that will be sustainable, that will really help women come away from this and grow a new life. And that has to be through assisting with medical insurance, and the only thing I think of is main care, assistance with housing, and voc rehab, and there's a thing called presumed eligibility. Women coming out of this should automatically receive presumed eligibility. And what that is already a law in place. I think today they call it TANF. Women who are pregnant get main care so they can maintain the health of themselves and their child, and other things like that. People who have disabilities, SSI, SDI, they're considered presumed eligibility. They automatically receive main care. So even if it's a time limit thing, just make it so these women are considered presumed eligible just to get their footing, you know, so they can peel off, rewind, and undo what's happened to them and move on.
Love it. Love it. How are we on our time?
Just about time to wrap up.
So what is your parting words? What is that you haven't said that you'd like to say? What do you want us to know?
Oppression is not a choice, it's a lack of opportunity and choice. Sexploitation happens because of oppression. Oppression keeps people in sexploitation. Sexploitation is not sex work, and it is not a choice. It's victimization and exploitation. I was never a sex worker. My friends who are in Survivors Speak and SALT are not sex workers. So flick that word out of the vocabulary and see us for people that have been victimized and exploited from childhood on. My information is on the end of this. Please feel free to contact me, regardless if you're someone that is in the life trying to come out of the life or have nothing to do with it.
And if 20 of you wrote a check for $500, that would be the $10,000 for a year of her services. And restaurateurs, please give her a call and feed them some good food, right?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kath.
Dee, thank you very
Love
much
you.
for being on the show.
Love you.
You made a very good point. You made a number of very good points.
Thank you. I'm glad I got to come
and
here.
I hope that people soaked it in and will take action, the right kind of action.
Me too.
Are you
help
going to do the? You're going to do the one and done thing? I know you're going to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What?
All right. Now that you've twisted my arm, no, I am not a fan of being one and done. I don't want you to think that this is your one opportunity for greatness. I want you to come back and take multiple opportunities for greatness.
Okay.
Because having you on the show, one of the things that makes the show great.
I would love to come back, and I would love to come back with graduated salts.
Yes, yes, I'd
All
love
right.
that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, I would add on to that is don't necessarily wait for me to contact you. You reach out and
Okay.
call us.
We're on it.
Call me to tell me that you'd like to
You're
do
ready.
a show.
You're
I
ready.
will do that, and I will
Cool.
figure out how to include the ability to film it and show it to the public when we have our big forum on educating about vacatur.
Well, I'm
Awesome.
sure
I'll go and Facebook Live it.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
I'm sure we can speak to Steve Poulos, one of the gentlemen who make this magic happen,
Okay, yay.
and he can work out a way to maybe
We've got some
have that
video
come-
people.
have that come to pass.
We got some people.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Catherine, once again, fabulous job. I just sat back here and took a nap.
I noticed. I said I'm boring him. I
Well,
noticed
we were
that.
just like, da, 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 you know.
I did notice though. I said I'm boring him.
No, good stuff. Oh my gosh. You know, we could do like 3 hours.
Well, folks, I guess you can say that this is a wrap. I think the show is done, and we'll be kind to the people in the production room in there, so they don't have to play any guessing games. But have a great weekend. I think it's a beautiful day out there. I think.
It is.
All right. It's a beautiful day. I'm not going to argue with these two ladies. No way.
Right.
Have a great day. Be safe. And
Thanks for
simplify your
watching.
life.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.